Hey everybody, this is Tom with VermiBag. It's been 3 weeks since I did my last video on the little mammoth and how the worms are doing on here. I was going to try and do it every week, but of course with the holidays and everything, and got a little bit behind again. So these have been in here now for about a month. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the camera in here. We'll take a quick look at how these are doing here, and also I'm going to take a peek into the little tote I have over there where I still have a fair amount of worms in there that I didn't transfer into here. And I've been feeding them pretty aggressively as well, and they're really exploding in there. So I'll pull the camera in a little bit closer. We'll take a look at the little mammoth first, and then we'll take a look at the tote. So I'm still experimenting with the water blanket. I'm trying a different material and see how that works. But again, it's not the best time to be experimenting with this right now because the weather is, pretty cold. So I really don't need any more cooling effects on the worms, and I don't need to water the system either because it's actually not very dry right now. I'm still fiddle-farting around with it, and I'm hoping that later on I'll figure out exactly how to make this thing work pretty well. I take that out and set it outside the system. So you can see over here I had some banana peels and stuff, and there's definitely a lot of worms down in with that. They really like the weight of that water blanket, if nothing else. They really hang out underneath it. Now I'm going to dig down a little bit deeper. You can see the change in the color of this bedding. So my bedding, mixed with that shredded paper and stuff, is a really light, white color. Like over here when I grab some of this that hasn't been processed yet, it's very white. And you can see here now, some of that whiteness is actually starting to disappear. It starts turning more into a brown, a light brown and gray. And if I go down deeper, down towards the bottom now, you can see here now this has worked over even more. So again, take the difference between this on the top and this, down right at the surface, and then this stuff down a little bit deeper. And if I go down even deeper, down 9 inches, you can see the material's really starting to get processed out. You're getting a lot more dark color than you are the white now. But as far as worm population, they're hanging out where the food's at, but they're not real active. I mean, it is fairly cool in here. I actually have a vest on, so I'm in the garage. So squash I put in here the other day. Pull some of this squash up and see what it looks like there. So yeah. They're liking that squash, that's for sure. Like I said before, the worms are getting a lot bigger. There's absolutely no doubt about that. They really enjoy this squash. They just inundate these things, these chunks when I put them in here. It's like a squash pie. Down underneath that, yeah, there's a lot of worms down underneath it as well. So the worms are thriving in here. I'm going to kind of dig around a little bit. I don't mind digging in my bins. I mean, I know some people really kind of don't want to dig around too much. I dig around in mine all the time. I think it actually benefits it sometimes because you can break up clumps and stuff like that. I have a few clumps of paper and stuff when I mixed up my bedding that didn't mix up all the way. It just moves things around. I don't go to the very, very bottom, but I'll go through the top 4 or 5 inches here, maybe 6 inches, and just move things around, take a look and just see what the system looks like. It gives you a good idea of what everything, what's going on in your system. If you're just looking at the surface, you know, you might be missing a lot of important things, because sometimes the surface is nice and moist and you think everything's really good, but as soon as you dig down a little ways, it gets really dry. So, you know, I think it's beneficial sometimes to dig around into the system and just see how it's doing. The worms are definitely concentrating around the food, but there's definitely worms just about everywhere else in the bag too. They're just a little bit thinner around the edges and stuff. But there's enough squash in there still that I'm not going to add any more food to it, but probably later on in the week. Today's January 1st, so you know, in the middle of the week and stuff, I'll probably add another, at least a big chunk of squash in here, and maybe a few other frozen vegetables and stuff. But overall, again, I think the system is doing fantastic. I'm real happy with it. I'm contemplating putting a heater on here, maybe on top of the water blanket there, just that'll warm that water up, and I'm thinking that might increase the activity. So we'll see. I might try that. Let's go quickly over and take a look at the tote. So let's open up this tote. And I kind of put the same food scraps in here too. I also added, you know, some banana peels over here. There's a few worms hanging out on there. Nothing great. A lot of beetles, unfortunately. I haven't eliminated those. And I do have a big piece of squash here, so let's pull that out and see what it looks like. Yeah, they've pretty well taken care of this scrap. I think there's still a big chunk there. I guess the edges of it are still there. That's where they're all hanging out right now, is kind of towards the skin side. But yeah, let me dig down in this system a little ways. Now on the bottom of the tote, I mean, the material's even turned more. Again, let me take just a little bit of the material that's right at the surface. So this is like the surface material. And this is the stuff that's down just a little ways. So, like that. And then as I go down towards the bottom, this is the material that's down towards the bottom. And you can see the progression of it. I mean, from the light white to a little bit of white to almost all dark. I mean, it's all soil. So when I go down about 4 or 5 inches here, this material is actually getting pretty well worked over. And, you know, this is a smaller area, and there's probably still, you know, 2 pounds of worms, I suppose, at least in this system. So, you know, they're processing this material. Again, look at the bottom, you know, well-processed material. And that isn't even actually the very bottom. If I go all the way to the bottom of this tote, this is what the material looks like. And that just worked over compost now. I mean, it's completely ready to be harvested. So, you know, the progression of this, and the moisture level and stuff on this tote's really good too. The totes are pretty good that way. You know, they hold moisture really well, and you know, being inside this Rubbermaid tub, but they still provide ventilation because the air is able to circulate through the sides. So I get airflow all through the sides here, and I also get airflow through the bottom, on certain areas of the bottom. Part of the bottom of this is actually sitting on the bottom of the tote. As the weight of the system gets heavier, it pushes down and actually sits on the bottom of the tote. And that's fine. I mean, you'll get, if you get moisture collecting, if you're getting it too wet, you can see the moisture down here. You tip up your tote a little bit, you can see the moisture. And if you wanted to get rid of that, if you had too much, you could drill a tiny little hole on the side of your Rubbermaid tub and just tilt up one end of the system just ever so slightly. And the water would just slowly go down to that end and drain out that hole, so you wouldn't have any moisture or liquid collecting in the bottom of the tote. This system right now is like the perfect moisture content. I mean, it's real moist. It's actually fairly warm in here too. I'm not sure why, probably some of this material that's decomposing with the squash and stuff, but it's not terribly cold. And you know, the worms in here are doing extremely well as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and, I'm not gonna feed this one either because I got this big chunk of squash. Then I'll stick right back there and put a little bit of, and this banana, I'll bury it, actually on this other side here. And I've been adding quite a bit of coffee grounds and stuff in here too. Anybody that knows me, I get a lot of it from work. So I normally mix the coffee grounds with the bedding. So if I have some fresh bedding mixed up, which I have like 2 8-gallon buckets over there, I dump the coffee grounds directly into the bedding that I made, and this bedding's probably 2 months old, and I mix it all up, shake it, and get it all mixed in there. So I'm constantly doing that. I tend not to add coffee directly to the bins. I prefer to add it to the bedding, and I think the worms like it a lot better. So that's it. Both the little mammoth and the tote are doing extremely well. The worm populations are really exploding in both of them. So I'll continue to monitor these. I'm not going to feed them today. I'll probably feed them both later on in the week. And hopefully in the next week or so, I'll try and do another video and see how they're coming along. That's it for today. This is Tom from VermiBag. Until next time,